Hey everyone, it's Emily. Welcome to Mama from Scratch. Today's video is all about building my dream garden. We put in a 1/4 acre garden. It is quite large, but I'm really excited to fill it up with lots of fruits and vegetables and flowers. I'm really excited to share with you the journey of us building this and working on it every single day for the last 3 months. It has been a labor of love, but with anything, it takes a little time and effort to see something really beautiful, and I'm really glad that we're building it nice and big because we can add on to it as we go and really fill it in. We're not going to get everything in this year, but that's okay. We have a starting point and we're going to elaborate from there. This garden is eventually will have a chicken coop in it as well as a greenhouse, just that will probably be built in either fall or early spring next year. So stay tuned for that. I'll share that with you. But this garden is not just going to have vegetables in it, it's going to have fruit trees, berry vines, and it's going to have a cut flower garden of perennials and annuals. And I'm really excited to have this big space where the deer and elk cannot enter and cannot destroy and eat everything. So I'll be sharing with you how we're installing a deer and elk fence, garden beds, and everything else that goes into putting together a garden. So if you have any tips and tricks for gardening, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear them, and it also helps other people out. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first project I started working on for the garden was the garden beds. We had to wait for the deer fencing to show up, so I got busy making these. 6-foot cedar fence pickets for the raised beds. I took the 6-footers, cut them in half for the ends, leaving the 6 feet length here. And then I bought 2x4 cedar boards and just cut those down. That way they go down like this, and then this part will go into the ground. Really basic, so we're gonna put these garden beds together. All I did here was put basically the feet down, and then I took the short side and then pre-drilled and then added my screws to that. Now I will say it's definitely easier if you just stack the boards and pre-drill all of them at the same time. It will go to save you a little bit of time there, but basically I just worked one side and then I did the other side, and then I repeated that same process and just lined it up so everything would be fine. And then we'll go ahead and attach the longer boards on the side. Really basic, very easy, nothing complicated about this. If you don't have a saw, you can have the hardware store cut them for you. Just make sure you know your measurements before you do that. Now, one of the beauties of making your own garden beds is that you can customize the size on this. So I ended up making a single layer and then also a double layer of boards stacked. And the double layer is actually going to be for the vegetable beds. And then I actually found these at the hardware store. They are metal troughs, but they don't have a bottom to them. Thinking back, I should have just bought the ones with the bottom, but you'll see some of those later on. These are 3x8s, and I thought these would be perfect for adding strawberries to. We are in a very cold area, and so doing raised beds will just help lengthen and speed up the growing process for us because the soil will be warmer. And then I left a little bit of extra wood on the ends of each of the corners. That way I could make a hoop house if I needed to attach something. But now I'm just gonna dig out the beds a bit. That way they go down into the ground. You can see we have no really weeds yet, but they'll be coming later on in the video. Wait till you see how tall the grass gets. But I'm gonna be using this hardware cloth to line the beds to help keep all the critters out, especially the gophers mainly. My plan for these beds is actually to put bulbs in them, and I don't want them being eaten by the gophers. So the cedar beds are really versatile, just like the hardware cloth, so you can use it however you want. But I decided to make these a little bit shallower, and then the mesh is going to go on the bottom. And do you see how I left extra around it? That way I'll be able to staple that to the outer part of the beds. I originally was going to put it on the inside, but it worked better having it on the outside and folding it up and around, kind of like a present. So now I'm going to be using my Surebonder Trigger Fire stapler. This made it a game changer in attaching the wire mesh because I didn't have to hammer in nails to the boards since the boards are thinner. And I want to thank Surebonder for partnering with me for today's video. I've been working with them for well over a year and I really love their products. So do you see how I press down the handle and then I position and then I pull that little green lever and that fires the staple into whatever your material is. This works not only for outdoor projects but also interior projects. I made my headboard with this stapler. I really like it. They offer lots of different staples for different projects that you might be working on, as well as a variety of staplers depending on the project, fasteners, glue guns, rivet and pneumatic tools, as well as arts and craft tools to make your crafting and DIY experience so much easier. So whether you are a DIYer the way I am, working on a simple home project, or you own a business, SureBonder has all the supplies that you need to help run it smoothly. So definitely be sure to check them out. I'll leave them all their information linked down in the description box below. I really love their tools and I know that you will as well. We ended up getting a whole truckload of a garden mix dirt for the garden, and so we're just using the tractor to fill all the beds. And then like I said, we're going to be having a mixture of flowers in here as well as berries and vegetables, and eventually a chicken coop and a greenhouse. But for the smaller beds here, I'm going to be using them for my bulbs. So I planted some tulips, but I ended up planting them too late. It just is what it is. We had a late frost and that killed pretty much everything at the end of May. And I am going to be planting some dahlias, which I've never done before. They are a tuber and they look so strange, but I'm really excited. They were growing so well and then that late frost just axed them. So they're starting over though, thankfully. I did not know that I have to actually pull these up in the winter time. So that's kind of good. It makes a little bit more work for me, but I can put them somewhere else if I want to. As I said in the beginning, this has been a huge process for us to set this all up and get this going. We had a smaller fence for just in the fall after we moved in to put our fruit trees in and keep the deer off of it, but we're still waiting on the deer fencing. You'll see me install that. But I actually, looking at gardening videos and stuff, I found that there is a no-dig method where you put layers of cardboard down and then you put about 6 to 8 inches of soil on top of it and it will keep the weeds out. And I really like this idea, so I thought this would be perfect for my cut flowers and all my annuals that I want to add. This year's garden is going to definitely be a work in progress. Next year I'll have more time to devote to it because I won't be planning out the entire thing. But I'm really excited. I am going to be doing my perennials on the outer border of the garden and then have all the annuals and vegetables and berries on the inside. So I ended up getting a couple of these flowers to add to this space, but none of them had come up, unfortunately. So this was like basically a total waste of my time. I ended up actually knowing that they weren't coming up because the weather has been all over the place. We have had so much wind and everything. It's been a disaster pretty much. So I actually started these inside in some potting mix and they have emerged. So I am waiting for them to get a little bit bigger and I'm going to transplant them into the garden in various spots. For the vegetable seeds, I picked up this kit at the store to use. It's really basic and simple. I do want to get the greenhouse going though for next year and be able to actually put everything in bigger cups. That way they can grow faster, because this I had to kind of transfer them, but these are some seeds I had from last year and this is what I've been planting this year. So I have some herbs, some vegetables, and then I have a couple different varieties of corn. They're not all seen here. And then the lettuce has kind of sprouted, but not really. So I just let the kids help me with this. They really enjoyed it, watching everything puff up and get in there. So I just labeled everything and it all emerged within like 5 days, which was great. But again, the weather has been so awful that some of it survived, some did not. Now to figure out how much fencing we actually needed and make sure we were kind of going in a somewhat straight line, I ended up getting the Let's Plot app with the Carta, and that helped us measure everything out, and it's been really useful in doing all of the landscaping in our yard as well. So the fence finally arrived. I'm so excited. It was about 3 weeks later than we hoped for, but that's okay. Months have gone by since then. You can see weeds are emerging in the garden. We ended up renting a post hole digger for the main post. We used strings and little stakes in the ground to make sure everything was plumb and very level and everything would be in a straight line so we could dig the rest of the holes for the garden. and it was long and tedious, but it was well worth it. And then we just took some spray paint and marked where we needed each of the holes, and the fun began of digging holes. So with this fencing system, you're not supposed to have to dig holes. You're supposed to take this stake basically and hammer it into the ground, keep it straight too and level, and then put your pole into it. Well, that didn't work for us. We had so many large boulders and aggregate in the ground that it just didn't work. So we ended up digging all the holes like you saw, and then hammering this into the ground about a good 8 to 12 inches, and then putting the posts in, and then to set that so it wouldn't blow away with the wind or anything, putting fast setting concrete, 1 bag per hole, not a ton but enough to hold it in place. And you can kind of see that little ridge there. That is so that the pole can come out, and if we ever need to move the fence, we can. This was basically a big learning curve for us. We had to kind of alter the system, the way it was built, to make it work for where we are and everything. So it works really well. We just kind of went down the line doing every single pole, and then the fence gates and everything. And then after that was done, you take this wire and you basically string at the top and the bottom, and it's your guide wire that you're going to attach your fencing to. So I ended up just looping this around and then using this basically has 2 holes in it, and then it cinches it, and then you use this specialty tool to pinch it together. I shared this with you on my back patio maker. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out. But it tightens it so that it doesn't loosen. And the next part to this is you actually take a gripple and you put this on one side, and then you funnel through the other part of the fencing through the opposite end, and then you use this special tool that is for the gripple, and you use this for wire fencing and stuff, and basically you pull it and it tightens it for you. It's really neat the way it works. It's a great system. I'm really excited that we got this, but once we got the hang of it, it went really, really fast. And then the last step before we could put the actual fencing around all the posts was to put the corner support posts in, and this actually goes above where the fencing will be, and the post goes downward at an angle, and then you basically take a chunk of dirt out and you put basically like a brick there or something, and then you use the pressure of that to keep it straight. Make sure you have your levels on, but it works really well. It's a really neat system, so I'll have it all linked down below for you if you're interested in it. But it's definitely been a learning curve, but it was well worth it. Then it came Monday and we had to work on this. We tried working on it the night before, but we got super frustrated with it. So we just stopped working on it and went to bed. I went out the next morning. I was like, I'm getting this done, and it worked out really well. We got a really good flow, me and my son doing this together. And so basically I'd pull it over and use the top little ring there to hold the fence, and then I'd put zip ties on it, and my son would actually cut those off so that way they didn't stick out. And you would do that about every foot or so. And then we would use this little machine here. It's a hog tie, basically, a hog ring, and hog ring the top and the bottom, and that stretches the fence. And then you can actually put stakes into the ground. I just haven't done that yet. So just kept rolling it out, and we would work each section. So now that the fence is done and the deer can't come in, I am taking down old fencing that we had up, which is basically just bird netting and T-posts, and it works really well. Now I'm going to be working on the strawberry beds. So I wanted to leave a little bit of space so you could walk through, but trying to line everything up with stumps in the ground was not the easiest thing, and then the weather was not cooperating. It would be sunny and then the clouds would roll in and it would downpour, so it was work a little bit here, work a little bit there. But we pretty much have been working in the garden about 3 hours a day for the last like 3 months. And it doesn't even look like it, but it takes a lot of love and labor to get this going. So here I am using that same fencing that I used for the bulbs. I'm using it for the strawberry beds. And I'm just pressing it in, stepping on it so that it lines it, so that way the gophers are not tempted to take strawberries. In the city, they never took my strawberries. They always took my vegetables, but I'm not taking any chances. And then I am actually going to line each of these beds with cardboard. And you don't have to do this, but it's to suppress the weeds because everything is coming up. We have so much thistle and I don't want that in my garden bed. So I basically line that up, and will that stay? No, but it gives something for the earthworms to eat and everything else. And it will decompose eventually, but it will suppress those weeds that are underneath since I'm not spraying in here. So I got the garden beds filled, and now I'm going to be adding in my strawberries. I got a couple different varieties. They're not going to produce a ton this year, but maybe by fall they might. I've got some Everbearers and then some June Bearers, and I'm really excited. Next year the garden is just going to be spectacular. So what I did with the beds is I ended up putting one variety, all my Everbearers in one, and then my June Bearers in another one, and then our friend actually gave me some extra strawberries that he had from last year. He needed to thin his out, so I was able to do the last bed with those. Now, I'm not a professional gardener. I am learning as I go. I've gardened my whole life, but you know, this is definitely the biggest garden I've ever had. So if you have any special tips and tricks, leave them in the comments to help me out and also everybody else that is starting their garden. We borrowed a tractor and were able to kind of level out the entrance of the garden. That way I could put a pathway here. Unfortunately, I can't find the footage, but I ended up putting gravel down for this space. But I'm really excited. We ended up removing quite a bit of logs, not little ones either, like massive stumps. So it was definitely useful, and I'm so glad that we did that. We ended up on the other side of the old garden, basically from fall, we rented a rototiller and tilled up the soil so I could plant corn there. And the reason I'm putting it there is because it's going to get a lot of sun and I don't want to shade any of my other plants. So you can see here that I laid the gravel and I just haven't finished it. I want to put gravel on part of the garden pathways, and then the other part will be mulch. Mulch doesn't last very long just because we get so much snow. So that's why I want to do gravel, but that will come in time. I don't think I'm going to commit to it this year. I'm going to try, but we'll see. So now I'm going to be making some rows for the corn, and I'm just starting off with 3 rows for now, and then I'm going to expand it later on. So this corn variety is called Peaches and Cream. Hopefully you can hear me over the sprinklers over there. But I just put them in little Dixie cups to start them off. Normally I've never done corn in this. I've always planted them in the ground, but it's been so cold you can't really do that here. So look at the roots. So I'm just going to break these 2 apart very gently. See? And I'm going to put 1 in each hole. And this, I believe, the Peaches and Cream is ready in 85 days. I have 3 other varieties, and the earliest is 63 days, 65 days, a 75 day, and then this is the 85 day. And so we'll have a good harvest about once a week or so. We're gonna have lots of corn, but you saw how much we rototilled, and so I'm going to plant this a couple weeks apart. So these seedlings I started about 2 weeks ago. They sprouted up super fast because I actually soaked the seeds first, and then for about 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour at most, and then I put them into the potting mix, and they sprouted within 2 days. It was great. So if you ever want to start your seeds a little faster, you can do that. This one's really stuck in here. But I will wait probably, now I'm planting these probably, come on, come apart. Will you come apart for me? Oh, they're really woven in there. I'll probably wait another week and a half at least before I plant the second, the second harvest for the corn. And that's for all the corn. I'll do all the corn at the same time for the second harvest. This is the first time I'm actually planting in the evening, and it is so nice out. It is just perfect. The sun is going down. I have a beautiful rainbow sunset to look at, and it's just so nice. I don't have the harsh sun beating on me. I love the sun, but it could be a little bit warm right now, and I'm just enjoying this. I'm going to start planting everything in the evening and just doing my garden work in the evening. So now I am using my 1/4 inch drill bit, and I am putting holes in about every 4 to 5 inches in the bottom of this cattle trough. This is a 2x6. I really wanted the other style that I had before, the 3x8s. They didn't have any, so I thought this would still make a really good garden bed, and then I don't have to put the metal mesh at the bottom, and nor did the store have any left over anyways. So I thought this would be a good solution. We're going to give this a try. This is all an experiment. I have a couple different ideas for this, but I am going to be putting soil in one of them, just straight soil, and then I was reading that you should put rocks in the bottom with some weed fabric, and I wasn't so sure about that, so I'm going to try it both ways. You guys can let me know if you have any tips on that. But then I decided to put cardboard on the bottom of these as well, just to suppress the weeds. I don't want them coming up through the holes and getting into my soil, and I do plan to use the cardboard to underneath my pathways as well. You can use really good weed fabric. I just haven't ordered any yet. I need to get on that. So the plan is to actually put rock on around these beds and then put bark around all the berries and everything. So everything again is a work in progress. You're seeing me as I'm working on it each day. And so I'm putting in 2 of these cedar beds that I had, because again, I could only buy so many of the metal beds, and it's good to see which ones are going to work better. Obviously the metal beds will, or the galvanized metal will last longer versus the cedar ones, but it's much more affordable, and again, I'm working with what I got. I'm really hoping that in mid-July I'll be able to share with you a full garden tour, mainly being finished, and then all of the wonderful vegetables and berries will be fully grown in and be really beautiful to share with you. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming in part 2. But now I am planting some peppers. These are banana peppers here on the end, and then I'm putting a Peter Pan squash in the middle, and then I'm putting a bell pepper on the other end here, and then I will stake them as they get bigger, but for now it just is what it is. They're gonna grow, and then I can adjust. This next bed I am putting in a cucumber. Our friend grew this for me in his greenhouse, which was amazing because the greenhouse is going to offer a lot for me once I get that in. So hopefully by fall it'll help extend the season for certain things, but if anything, it'll be done next year in the spring, and I plan to grow everything out there versus tracking it from the indoors to the garage and back and forth every day. A greenhouse will make it much easier. So because I don't have the other bed built yet, I thought it'd be a great idea to use these planters that I have left over for some fruit trees and put my tomatoes in them since they are really big. They are 10-gallon buckets, and I thought these would be perfect for this. And then I can just put the metal cages in around these. And again, I didn't grow these, my friend did, and I was really thankful that he gave them to me because I just had so much on my plate getting everything started. And you can see how him growing them in the greenhouse, how large they are. They already have flowers on them. I am so excited.
Misty mountains, dusty roads ahead, crossing rivers, dreaming of a bed from...
I'm finally getting around to taking down the other half of our winter fence that we had up, which again was just the regular bird netting with T-posts. And I'm going to save that to net around some of the bushes and things in the yard and the trees. For the deer and the elk don't eat them, but I'm actually going to repurpose these T-posts and use them for hog fencing for a trellis for all the berries.
Sunshine on the broken, let the summer come again, let the heat find all the frozen, let the force in, and I am above, I feel above.
So we ended up picking up 3 hog fence panels that were 8 foot in length, and I thought that would be enough for all the berries. I thought wrong, I did not measure. So I actually need to buy 3 more of these and add them to the berries that are behind me at the moment. But both these rows have raspberries in them, and then the very end bush are blackberries. And so we just pounded down the T-post and then basically slid in the hog fencing, and then to loop it and to tie it to the T-post, I'm just using the T-post brackets here. They're really easy to work with. You can find them right next to the T-post at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever hardware store, Tractor Supply. And so I'm just locking that on there, and now it's about a foot or so off of the ground, which I prefer, and then the berries I can interweave them into the fencing as they grow, and they'll grow on both sides, but I wanted to make sure they had something vertical to grow on that would last longer, and if I change my mind I can always use a hog fencing for something else. As you can see, I need to put them here on the left, but I'm actually going to be using the hog fencing to create arbors in my garden as well. I just haven't gotten to that yet. We have to buy larger ones. I need to buy a 16-foot hog fencing. I just have to figure out how to get that home. Now I'm working on my perennial garden here. I told you earlier I do want to have a cut flower garden, and so I'm going to plant perennials around the border of my garden. For most part on one side of the garden. Maybe eventually I'll get to the other side, because I want this to be a space where I can just come, relax, and just have a beautiful space to be in and not worry about the elk and the deer eating everything. And so I picked up a couple things from Home Depot and Lowe's and the local nurseries. I have ranuncuses, roses, peonies, a lot of other different types of plants, but I am going to go through and label everything, and then when I do my garden tour I'll be able to show you everything in full bloom. I'm really excited to see how it will fill in and everything. I'm kind of staggering the plants so it looks a little bit more organic and natural looking. But the garden is going to have lots of color in it, pinks, purples, blues, oranges. I am just so excited, and it's going to bring in all the pollinators for the vegetables and the berries and the fruit trees. I'm really excited. We are going to have, I think, 12 fruit trees in the garden after we get everything planted. We have more coming this weekend to plant, so I'll be sharing that with you guys soon. Again, the garden tour is going to be so beautiful, everything in full bloom. I'm really excited. I know not everything we're going to get a harvest from this year, but it's just a wonderful space that I can go and be creative in a different way and really enjoy nature and everything that God has created for us to enjoy. So the rock is actually from all the holes that we've been digging in the yard and just regular landscaping. So we didn't buy any of this. I'm putting it to good use. I thought it'd be fun to make a border around the perennials, and then I'm sure I'll change my mind. But again, pathways are going to go in. I just have have a lot of cleanup to do and a little bit more work before you guys see the finished look. But hopefully you have enjoyed seeing how the garden is coming along, and the build journey of our 4th acre garden. It's definitely been a process, and not everything happens overnight, but we are really excited to see how it can grow over the years, and I can continue to add to it, and if we need to eventually expand it, we can. But we do plan to have a chicken coop in here and also a greenhouse, so we left room for that, and it's going to be really, really nice. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you for being here. You can check the screen for more videos and also more makeovers and DIYs linked down below in the description box with a little arrow. So with that, I hope you have an amazing day. Be sure to check out Sure Bonder, and I will see you all in the next one.